So let's have a big round of applause to welcome the Wildlife Festival back to Birmingham. Come on! Hey! You know, this is the fifth year that we brought this festival to this great city. And this unites us, I think, in caring, compassionate Britain at its best. If you look around all of these stalls, if you look at the organisations, the wildlife organisations here in Britain, the animal welfare organisations that do work here and around the world, the food, the vegan food, an explosion in change of diet because so many of us begin to understand the ethics of what we're eating as well. So let's just welcome everyone and let's just say this is the way that we must see all our cities hosting festivals like this in the future. Wouldn't you agree? Exactly. Now, a lot of people say to me when I go around schools, universities and other places, and I'm fortunate to talk to people about wildlife, is what got you into this work? What makes you get up in the morning and get a bit angry to say we've got to do something about wildlife? Well, I always think about that a bit. And one moment in time always makes me think was the time when I thought, that's it, I'm going to leave the corporate world, I'm going to leave a well-paid job, I'm going to do something about wildlife. And that's when I was with the Kenya Wildlife Service in the Mara National Park in Kenya, standing over a dead elephant. The smell, the sight of that will never ever leave me. And when I was talking to the guards who put their lives on the line every day to stop the poachers coming into the national park, killing these animals, it really made me think about the ignorance, the greed, the corruption and the power that was destroying wildlife in Africa, but is equally destroying wildlife at home here in this country. Wouldn't you agree? And that's exactly why it is that this is an important moment in time, not just in this country, but around the world. That African elephant was killed because of ivory, because of the greed to get the ivory from that animal that could only be achieved by cutting off its trunks effectively with a chainsaw and letting that animal bleed to death, so it could then be sold for trinkets in Southeast Asia. It was greed and ignorance that was driving the ivory trade that led to the killing of that elephant. But it's the same greed and ignorance and stupidity that is letting our wildlife be destroyed back here at home as well. Be it our badgers, be it our buzzards, be it our birds of prey, be it our bees, wherever we look. There is ignorance, there is power, there is corruption that's willing to drive animals to the verge of extinction. Do any of you think that's acceptable? Do you? It isn't. And we've got to make a stand against it. The global population of this planet is growing massively. When Fairport Convention were big and really big in 68, 69, when I arrived on this planet, there was only about 3.2 billion people. Now there's 7.5 billion. By 2050, there'll be 9.5 billion people on this planet. And we'll have to feed more in the next 50 years than the last 10,000 years combined. We have to lift millions of people out of poverty. We have to give people access to a quality of life that we take for granted. But how are we going to do that? And protect our precious wildlife as well? We have to rethink how this world works. We have to rethink how we produce food. We have to rethink how we fuel our cars. We have to rethink how many children or any children we're going to have in the future. We have to rethink how we educate the next generation to think there is more to life than just consumerism, capital growth and getting richer when the world around us is being destroyed. Wouldn't you agree? And that's the very heart of the wildlife movement, not just in this country, but around the world today. The badger is the issue that caught my imagination and my anger a number of years ago. But it's a lightning rod issue, not just in this country, but around the world, for how we produce food, how we manage our wildlife. Do any of you think it's acceptable for the government of this nation to spend £50 million of taxpayers' money killing just over 30,000 badgers? That's what they've spent so far. That's over £1,100 a badger. We know the vast majority of those animals don't have disease at all. We know a lot of those animals have been killed by a so-called experimental free shooting method that allows those animals maybe to take 5-10 minutes to die of blood loss and organ failure. Do you think in a modern civilized world £50 million should be spent lifting the protection on a species to kill it in that way, do you? No. But the fact is it's happening. The fact is it's getting worse and it's being expanded. By 2020 it'll be 100,000 badgers. By 2025 it'll be 200,000 badgers. And we were told this week that we shouldn't worry about badger numbers because they're pretty healthy. I'm pleased that badgers do well in this country. I'm pleased they have protection under the law from the badger baiters, the evil wildlife criminals that want to kill them. But what I'm not pleased about is that that's then used as an excuse to start killing them again. And we're seeing that used across the board for lots of different species. We brought red kites back into this country in the 1990s. People are now calling them for to be killed again. The otters have improved our water supply, our rivers, and they've come back to our rivers. Now we're being told they should be killed again. And now we have Natural England issuing licenses to kill ravens, as we heard before, because they might kill sheep and lambs. I've never heard anything so ridiculous. We are a killing culture. That killing culture has to stop. We have to become caring. We have to become compassionate. And we must put value on the natural world that brings so much benefit to us, both physically and mentally. It's not our playground for destruction. Wouldn't you agree? Exactly. And that's why we have to make a stand. Now, there are moments in history where suddenly when people come together, they can make a difference. Many of you will remember about a year ago, a number of people came to me, some of them in this square, saying that we've got to do something about fox hunting. The Prime Minister in our election campaign turns up in a factory in Leeds and says off the cuff, I think we should repeal the Hunting Act, the most popular piece of legislation on the statute books in this country. She said, I have no problems with fox hunting. Seems completely reasonable to me. Well, she didn't expect what she got after that, did she? Within weeks, people are ringing me saying, listen, we've got to have the biggest wildlife protest we've ever seen in this country. We've got to push aside all those charity restrictions and lobbying rules. We've got to get our backsides into London. We've got to get ourselves to Downing Street in our thousands. We're going to have to show people in this country and around the world that we won't let politicians, we will not let politicians play politics with our wildlife. Wouldn't you agree? And despite a terrible terrorist attack in Manchester, despite the most heightened security status we'd seen in this country for years, with armed soldiers at Downing Street, with helicopters and armed police all the way along the route, over 6,000 people took to the streets of London that day and went to Downing Street, and that made headlines in Britain, headlines around the world, and it sent a shockwave through our political establishment. And by the time the election came a few weeks later, seats fell on that very issue, that and the other issue that I talked about a moment ago, the ivory trade, where the government were in bed with the antiques industry, that were saying we want to keep selling antique ivory no matter how many elephants are dying. 33,000 a year, one every 15 minutes. What do we care? We still believe that ivory should be sold and industry should be allowed to sell it and trade it into Asia and other places. Well, the British public didn't think that. The voting public didn't think that. When all those young people got off their backsides, when they all went out and voted in the end, they made a difference. The government majority disappeared. Theresa May got one hell of a nasty shock, and the political establishment in this country started to wake up for the first time about the power of the wildlife vote, both at home and abroad. We will not allow our politicians to play politics with this any longer. Any party that wants to enter office in this country, any party that wants to govern this country, needs to listen to the caring, compassionate people who care about our environment and care about our wildlife. Wouldn't you agree? But we've got to keep fighting for it. Last year's election was just a start. We've got to keep the pressure on the government. And we've seen some positive steps. A significant step to bring about a stop to the ivory trade in this country. A stop on the use of neonicotinoid insecticides that have such a decimating effect on our pollinators and bees. A stop on the use of the worst products that pollute our oceans with plastics. A real move to try and improve animal welfare legislation for domestic dogs and cats. But we have many other issues that have not been addressed. The badger cull goes on because the farming lobby has the government in a headlock and they keep pushing it ahead. We have the licensing of other species being killed, and that's not acceptable. And what we've got to do is keep fighting it. And we've got to keep fighting with the opposition to take our concerns seriously, as well as the government. We've got to say that people are not going to sit back quietly any longer. Yes, it might take a revolution. It might take us all to get on the streets, as Patrick Parkham said in that article that Chris Packham contributed to in The Guardian a few days ago. Our future of our countryside, the future of our natural world is now on the line. There is no time left for us to be complacent. We do need to make sure that no one underestimates how far we will go, how far we will work, how much we will sacrifice to protect what we take for granted around us. The natural beauty of this world, the natural beauty of this planet that can't be replicated, I could say, anywhere easily in the universe. Something that we are destroying at an unprecedented rate. So yes, this is a festival to celebrate wildlife. It's a festival to make us think about issues like the badger cull and fox hunting and wildlife crime and what happens in Africa and other places about lions and about elephants. But what it also is It's an opportunity for us to reach out to the people of a big city like this, who walk through this square, that come and see the stands, that come and talk to us, that begin to share our passion, get infected by our belief that this world can be made a better place, not just for humans, but for animals. And if we care for animals, we tend to care for each more better. This country's special. It has many challenges ahead of it, not least our relationship with Europe and where we go in the future. But there's one thing that unites us. It's a care and compassion for wildlife. That's why the RSPCA was started here. That's why charities like Born Free was started here. That's why the Badger Trust does what it does and was started here. That's where, wherever you look, you will find British people around the world doing amazing things for animals. Last week I travelled through Romania and met some of the most amazing rescuers of dogs in the most difficult circumstances in a male-dominated, largely corrupt country. Women in Romania that inspired me in what they were doing. But behind them, there were many British organisations and individuals that were helping getting dogs out of that country, were helping raising money. And you see that wherever you go around this world. There is something uniquely special about us. We should be a beacon to the rest of this planet. We want to make sure that Britain stands for caring, compassionate wildlife and environment protection, that we infect the rest of the world with our caring and compassion, and that we will make this whole planet a better place. By the time we get to 2050, those of us that are still here, I can only hope that we've learned the mistakes of the past, and we will continue to fight, and we will make a difference, and that the animals that are now under threat can live in peace, can live in sanctuary, and can live alongside us with the mutual respect and care and compassion they deserve, rather than that greed, ignorance and power that has led to so much destruction that we should all be rightly ashamed of. Thank you very much.